person. Hi, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Avenues to Justice fundraiser. My name is Melissa Weberman, and I am one of the co-chairs of the DC Bar Foundation's Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council, or LC for short.
And my name is Courtney Lindsay. I am the other co-chair of the LC. As the leading funder of civil legal aid in the District of Columbia, the DC Bar Foundation works to fund, support, and improve the legal representation of people who are financially disenfranchised or who are otherwise underserved in the District of Columbia. The LC provides young lawyers an opportunity to further help this goal. Our members serve as ambassadors in promoting the foundation's mission and programs, and we help raise funds to support those efforts. Since joining the LC, I have come to recognize the DC Bar Foundation as a visionary organization dedicated to forming a deep understanding of the challenges DC residents face and looking for ways to address those challenges in a holistic way by supporting underserved communities and the attorneys that provide civil legal services to them. By continually assessing needs and through strategic grant making each year, the foundation moves us closer to a DC where equal access to justice is a reality.
On behalf of the LC and the DC Bar Foundation, thank you for joining us this evening. Usually the LC's signature fundraiser is a fun, in-person networking karaoke event. It's called Lip Sync for Justice. I hope we'll do it next year. It's a lot of fun. However, last year and this year, we decided to gather virtually in light of the coronavirus pandemic and in light of the increased importance of access to justice. Our focus this evening will be on how we can create different pathways to justice. You'll hear from both individuals and organizations who are working towards creating a more equitable legal system in DC and around the country. We are thrilled to have already raised over $65,000 so far through our Avenues to Justice fundraiser, already surpassing our initial $45,000 fundraising goal. Thank you so much to all of our individual and corporate sponsors for your support. We are now $6,000 away from our stretch goal of, actually we're $5,000 away from our stretch goal of $70,000. If you would like to support the DC Bar Foundation during the event and help us reach our stretch goal, please text the word avenues to 44321. We are fortunate tonight to have an additional $3,500 in matching gifts for money that comes in during the event. So give during the event. Thanks to Colin Mooring for matching gifts up to $2,000 and to Bertram for matching up to $1,500. And now let's get into tonight's program. First, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser will kick things off with opening remarks. Then LC members will moderate what I'm certain will be an inspiring panel discussion with representatives of 4 different DC Bar Foundation grantees. And finally, we are thrilled to have the second gentleman of the United States, Douglas Emhoff, join us for some closing remarks. So be sure to stick around to the end of tonight's event. You won't want to miss it. We hope that our program tonight will provide you with some inspiration, some motivation, and some hope for the future. And now, Mayor Bowser, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. I'm Mayor Muriel Bowser. We are grateful for the donors who helped make tonight's event possible and whose generous contributions will directly support the legal needs of district residents. We know that those needs are greater now even more than ever, as our lowest income residents bear the brunt of this public health crisis. Affording them the legal representation and assistance they need is fundamental to upholding our DC values. On behalf of all Washingtonians, I want to thank the DC Bar Foundation for all of its important work, and I hope you'll join me in supporting them as they fulfill their mission of providing all DC residents with equal access to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. My name is Mickey Herman, and I'm co-chairing this evening's Avenues to Justice event alongside Ashley James. Together, we want to thank all of you for joining us. And we also want to extend a thank you to our many generous sponsors.
The DC Bar Foundation is the largest investor in our community's civil legal aid. If you've not done so already, please consider supporting this event and the critical work of the DC Bar Foundation by texting the word Avenues to 44321. The more you give, the more we're able to do.
In 2021, the foundation awarded over $11 million in grants to legal aid organizations throughout the district that work tirelessly to, among other things, amplify the voices of those in need, keep families in their homes, and protect people. The DC Bar Foundation's grants provide critical support to DC legal aid organizations, providing a wide spectrum of civil legal services, including housing, employment, immigration, domestic violence, access to public benefits, and consumer law, as well as family and disability law issues.
Joining us tonight to discuss the important role that the DC Bar Foundation plays in supporting and coordinating the efforts of civil legal aid organizations in the District of Columbia are representatives from 4 of its grantees. First up, we have Alana Brown of the Safe Sisters Circle. Welcome, Alana. Laura Brown of First Shift Justice Project. Hi, Laura. Karen Newton-Cole of the Neighborhood Legal Services Program. Hi, Karen. And last but certainly not least, from my alma mater, Keisha Turner-Roberts of Howard University School of Law's Fair Housing Clinic. I'm going to turn this over to Mickey to get us started for what's going to be, I think, a great panel with some powerful women.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you all so much for joining us for this panel. I wanted to start by talking about civil legal aid in general. Civil legal aid is an issue that we all care about passionately, but I think it's fair to say that a lot of people don't quite know what it is. In fact, until I became involved with the DC Bar Foundation, I had an admittedly poor sense of the incredible work that you and other providers of civil legal aid do. So, for the first question, I'd like to ask you each to share with us how you describe civil legal aid. How do you explain it to those who are unfamiliar with the concept? And before you do, I would love for our audience for you to briefly introduce yourselves to everyone and the work that your organizations do. So if we could start with Alana, that would be terrific. Thanks.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Alana C. Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Safe Sisters Circle. We provide culturally specific, holistic, and trauma-informed services to Black women survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence, primarily in wards 7 or 8. That's our focus area. So when we think civil legal aid, we think of things that we most commonly think we can do for ourselves, like basic legal rights that people are deserving to get, people have trouble getting, like rights to childcare, rights to places to live, rights to freedom for getting hurt from domestic violence or sexual violence, rights from, for housing, things such as that. So when I think of legal aid, I try to explain to people as things that people have rights to, but people often have time or trouble getting for themselves and need some assistance and help because they're coming from such a disenfranchised place and such a oppressed place that it's hard for them to get those rights and to get those themselves without a little bit of help. And so we for legal services, I come from a criminal background, so we're not like no prosecutors. We are defense attorneys. We come in and we do work within the civil system. Like I work in the domestic violence court, I work in family court, and we do some civil aid work as well. So criminal advocacy work as well, but not in the criminal court. So I think people think about the lawyers, think of law and order, but we're like not the law and order lawyers. We're the ones who are in the streets doing the stuff with the people outside in the civil world.
Thanks, Alana. That's very helpful. Keisha, I wonder if you could introduce yourself briefly and then pick up where Alana left off, maybe.
Sure. My name is Keisha Turner-Robert, and I am a proud professor of clinical law professor at Howard University School of Law's Fair Housing Clinic. I love my job. My job is to teach and to nurture the future lawyers of America, right? Our leaders, our politicians, our presidents, hopefully, our other lawyers, our DAs, things such as that. How I define civil legal aid is, the way I look at it, is a combination of services and resources that help all Americans of all backgrounds to effectively navigate the justice system. That's how I look at it. Our jobs as legal service providers is to help navigate those who are not familiar with the justice system, because it's very difficult to, if you don't have the vocabulary, you don't know what there is definitely a way to litigate, definitely a way that the courts runs business that are not necessarily easy to pick up on. And so our jobs is to help that, to help our clients to navigate that, to ensure the justice for all is truly served.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Keisha. Karen, could you go up next?
My name is Karen Newton-Cole, and I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Legal Services Program. Neighborhood Legal Services Program has been in existence since 1964, and we have been serving the District of Columbia residents, those poor, low-income residents in the District of Columbia since that time. We have practices in housing, we do family law, including domestic violence. We also do economic security cases. And when I talk about economic security cases, I'm talking about anything that impacts the economic security of our clients. For example, they could be public benefit cases. They could be consumer law cases. They could be veteran cases, discharge upgrades. It could be anything from, say, record sealing cases, any kinds of things that impact the economic security of people in the District of Columbia. Civil legal aid it's really just giving people the in or the opportunity to be able to navigate the law, but more than just navigate the law. It's the difference between people who have income or have sufficient income to go out and hire somebody to deal with the issues that they come to. And those issues come up more often when you start talking about people who are disenfranchised, or if you're talking about people who are low income, they face those issues more often than regular people. But regular people have the wherewithal to be able to go out and hire an attorney to represent them. When you're talking about civil legal aid, all it means is that you get access to an attorney to represent you in those matters that are where you need that kind of representation. And I believe that every lawyer, every person needs a lawyer whenever they're faced with things that threaten housing, things that threaten their economic security, things that threaten their families, divorce cases, when you start talking about custody cases or any of those kinds of things. People aren't made to just kind of navigate the system. That's what we do as lawyers. We navigate the system. And so the only difference between coming to Neighborhood Legal Services Program the firm, is that it's for free.
That's great, Karen. I'm hearing navigating a lot, the navigating, and also connecting people to the right, or helping people realize the rights that they already have, but they might not be able to, on their own. So thank you so much, Laura. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, the work that you do, and then if you have any thoughts about what civil legal aid is and how you describe to those who are unfamiliar with the concept.
Sure, great, thank you. My name is Laura Brown, and I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of First Shift Justice Project. And we are a legal services organization that provides employment-related legal services to pregnant women, working mothers, and other family caregivers who are employed. And what we do is help them assert their workplace rights that allow them to play their dual roles as both breadwinners and caregivers. Practically, the services that we provide are direct legal services and representation, technical assistance to medical providers who are producing medical certifications for people to get time off and accommodations. And we are also elevating the stories of our clients, both to the public to raise awareness and also to policymakers. In my mind, and the way I describe at a cocktail party, civil legal aid to people who have no idea what I'm talking about, is that it's just as simple as providing legal representation and guidance to someone who needs a lawyer but can't afford it when their rights are either being violated or also at risk of being violated. And that is space that First Shift dwells pretty regularly in. In the employment context in First Shift's work, that means if you're at risk of being terminated, or if you're at risk of having your leave request denied when you need to take care of a family member, or when you're being discriminated against because you're pregnant. Those are all contexts in which we'd actually like to get to people when there's only a risk and not actually a violation of the law. But when people do come to us, when there is a legal violation, then certainly we jump in and provide them with the representation that they need. I think civil legal services can be a combination of information, both about what legal rights are or aren't, how to navigate, there's that word again, a process, and then also help them to navigate that process. And clients come to us all over the map with that type, with whatever they need. I mean, sometimes they don't know if they have a legal violation. And so then we're spending more time in the information space. Sometimes they know that their rights are being violated, but they don't know which, agency to go to or how to go about, seeking recourse. And so that's the service we provide at that time. And so we really are trying to tailor our services to whatever the clients who come in our door need.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Laura.
Okay. I want to kind of pick up, Laura, with something I think we discussed in our prep yesterday. I think helps kind of set the tone for the population of folks that we're talking about, that I think is really helpful for those who are viewing, I think, to really understand how important it is that your organizations, DC Bar Foundation, are able to provide services. Can you, Laura, kind of give us an idea of what are we talking about in the income of the people that you are helping, and what does it look like to be low income or to be eligible for the services? Because I think when people hear this, it will be, I think, a bit enlightening and maybe a bit shocking too.
Well, First Shift's income guidelines are 300% of the federal poverty guideline, and that is a standard that's actually a lot more generous than many legal services providers. And that's on the premise that our people are employed. And so it doesn't make sense when a client comes in our door and they're a little bit above the 200% guideline, which is a typical guideline, to say, well, I'm sorry, you just got, let go from your job, so you still have income, but maybe if you come back in 3 months, we'll be able to help you because you'll qualify. And so that's why our income guidelines are a little more generous. As a practical matter, most of our clients are not making more than minimum wage, which we're grateful that in DC, minimum wage is, I think it went up in July 1st this year. I think it's up at $15.25 now. And that's wonderful, but now everyone should get out their calculator and multiply 15.25 by 40 by 52. And that is what our clients are bringing home. And none of our clients are single. Our clients have kids, they have grandparents that they are supporting, they have other family members that they are supporting. And in this day and age, it doesn't take, it's not rocket science to look around you and see the gentrification happening in the city and see how difficult it is. And unfortunately, through the pandemic, seeing the tent cities go up and understanding in a real way that people need to be able to hang on their jobs and they need to have good jobs.
Thanks, Laura. I wanted to just make sure we kind of put that out there because I think it's sometimes there's a maybe misconception about what it is, what the income bracket or income level is of folks who are seeking civil legal aid. And I think for so many of us who don't realize that there's such a large population in our community that are, not even meeting that minimum wage for various reasons, or even remembering what minimum wage, it doesn't do as much as we think. This is a very expensive city to live in. And, it's easy to kind of take for granted what it costs just to even put a roof over one's head. I think with that said, we are also still coming out of, hopefully still coming out of a pandemic that has rocked everybody, no matter who you are across the globe. And I think it's, safe to say across the board that those who are using civil legal aid services and reaching out to your organizations are even more in need now than they might have been, at the start of 2020. With that said, and I'm going to kind of start with you, Karen. You've come off mute, so I'm going to take advantage of that. Can you tell me kind of what are some of the primary needs that you see as we emerge from the pandemic?
Well, I mean, there are the needs around housing, and a lot of people hear about that, especially here in the District of Columbia, because everybody knows that there was a moratorium on evictions in DC. And that meant that people could not be evicted during the pandemic or during the public health emergency, I should say. But that has changed now, and so we're emerging from that. The council just passed legislation where they're phasing out sort of this moratorium, and so at different levels and at different times, people will be able to be evicted from their housing. And so that's one of the places that you see a lot of that. The other thing is that there's impact in employment law, especially early on in the pandemic. And as we move through the pandemic, there was a heavy impact in terms of people not being able to keep their jobs and seeking unemployment benefits and just trying to be able to survive. The other thing we saw was with regard to families, in a lot of instances, you had negotiated arrangements where there was custody arrangement where a child would be with one parent for a period of time and another parent for another period of time. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of families just defaulted, if you will. So whoever had the child kept the child and moved away or moved around. And then there were a lot of emergency hearings about the custody of the child and enforcing custody agreements. And I'm not sure that many people realized that that was going on, but there was a general sense of some panic that was happening through this period of time. So people were really, really concerned about being able to survive during the pandemic. And there were some protections put in place, moratoria put in place to help them survive. But still, it was a problem and it was problematic. And as we start to move out of COVID-19 or post-pandemic, I should say, although we still have the pandemic, but less of concern with vaccines, you have a phasing out, and we all anticipate it'll come a period of time where legal services will just be inundated, if you will. There will be a lot of work to be had, so to speak, and we will be relying on our partners a lot. We will be relying on our funders a lot, in fact, in order to be able to get through this period of time. And we will be relying on each other to be able to work together in order to make sure that our clients have a place to go, that our clients do have someone to turn to when they're faced with all the different changes that are going to come up in the next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. I would love, and you started off by talking about the housing issue, which I think has been something that I think so many of us think about and is almost in a way a bit obvious, for lack of a better term. I want to turn it over to Keisha to see if you can maybe speak to this a bit more in depth. And I think I will say, while at Howard, I also was a part of the Fair Housing Clinic, so have a little preview into some of the work that you do. But I think it touches so much on some of the work that I feel like even more inundated and even busier, as I can think about some of the work that I did when we didn't have a pandemic to think about. And I think to the point about these tent cities, they are popping up, and you can't help but know that it might get a bit worse. So Keisha, would love some of your thoughts on kind of what you're seeing in your area as we come out of this pandemic.
What we're seeing is tenants as well as landlords struggling. Tenants struggling to make payments, keeping roofs over their heads. Some tenants have residences that are falling apart, like roofs falling out, or, the flooring is falling down, or, they don't have hot water. Or one of my clients doesn't have a stove and haven't had a stove to cook in like months, things like that. So you see like the deterioration of landlords' abilities to make the repairs to make sure that all their tenants are residing in a safe and habitable place as per law. And then you have the landlords who are like strapped for money. A lot of them, they're trying to think of other ways. Some landlords are really working with their tenants in tandem and try to, shepherd their tenants through this this period of time, and some are not. Some are just, I'm going to get you out, and any way I can figure out to get you out, I'm going to do that. Some landlords just say, I just want you out tomorrow, right? And that's called self-help eviction, and that's not legal in DC. But there have been more and more reports of that type of action from landlords. It's been increasing since prior to pandemic. DC, of course, is a very expensive place to live. And the biggest problem, and the problem that's been amplified since the pandemic, is the affordability of housing, safe and affordable housing, right? And there's less housing that's available for residents. Also, my job and my students, what we do is to educate tenants about their rights with regards to having affordable housing, to keep landlords to task with regards to keeping the residences and the condition as they're supposed to fight illegal evictions. You'd be surprised how many landlords don't keep ledgers or records of payments properly. You have to go through that. In addition, a lot of landlords now, I have at least two clients who are now, the landlords are selling the buildings, right? And they're not necessarily doing what they need to do to keep up the building in a good, safe environment, because the idea is that, eventually the tenants will just leave because of the conditions of the housing is getting worse and worse. So I see as my job is to make sure that that the tenants are able to reside in their units and get the conditions fixed while they make their decision about next moves, right? Be it like exercising their TOPA rights, that's like Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. They might want to entertain or to do that, or they may just want to leave, but just to have them to be able to take a deep breath in a safe place for them to make that choice. So I think that's a lot of what my students and I do.
Thanks so much. Before we turn to the next question, I do want to remind our audience that we are here live with these incredible women. And if you have any questions about the work that they do, or the things that they're saying, or how you can get involved, please feel free to enter that question into the chat below the presentation, and we'll try to answer as many questions as come in over the course of this panel.
Awesome. Thanks, Mickey. So, Alana, I'm going to turn this one over to you. I think to start you off with answering this next question, I think is for many of you, you are part of networks that the DC Bar Foundation is able to support. There are two of them, including the Family Law Network, but also the Landlord Tenant Network. And I would love for Alana, if you could start us off by telling us some of the value that you see to Safer Sisters to participating in this network, and what has really been the benefit. Oh, Alana, I'm going to ask, come off mute for me, please. Thank you.
The value I see in the Family Law Network is we are a newer organization. We're a little bit smaller. So just being around organizations like Right for the City, other organizations that are just a lot bigger than us, they can give us advice and give us input into how they deal with their family law cases. So it's like having a network of people that you can go out to and get help with. Even people, like I had a case against one of the people in our network at one time. Like we were against opposing counsel in court. But at the same time, that didn't stop that person from giving me advice about things outside of the case. But also it helps you, we do a lot of data collection. It teaches you how to get data for your clients and how to use that data. Get help with funders, how to use that data to make sure you're implementing good programs for your clients. So I think it's just a really good way to get to know people better and makes our kind of like our big DC network a lot smaller. So like all the family law people, we're kind of out here doing our own thing. I'm in Southeast, and we're 78. Some people might be in Deanwood, some people might be in Northwest. We all kind of come together and talk about the same issues that our clients are facing. And a lot of them are facing the same issues. A lot of them are impoverished, or survivors of domestic violence, or have access to language issues, immigration issues, things like that. So I think it's just a really good way to like kind of bring out and kind of focus on a more systematic way of focusing on family law issues and family. And so I think it's a great program, and I've enjoyed being part of it.
I feel like you have kind of made the perfect segue into a topic I really wanted to address. And so I'm going to shift over there because I want to give us some time to talk about it, which is this coordinated intake and referral program that the DC Bar Foundation is really working on kind of implementing this year, prior to this year, but especially this year. And I think your discussion about the ability to connect and with other organizations that also receive funding from the DC Bar Foundation, but also to understand that people who are coming to you are also probably in need of help from maybe Laura or Karen or Keisha. And so I would love to, I see the nodding Laura, so I'm going to come over to you. I need little bits. That's all I need to kind of decide who's going to come in first. But I would love kind of if you could help us understand, how does a coordinated intake program help and benefit district residents, not only those in need, but everybody, and therefore why it's so important that the DC Bar Foundation is really focusing on this right now.
Let me just say that 15 years ago, when I came to the legal services community in DC, I was part of a group that convened to talk about this. And for many reasons, it was not ripe and it didn't go anywhere. But I was doing a lot of intake then, and I was so excited about the possibility and crushed when nothing went anywhere. And so I am delighted to see this effort being picked up again. And I think that the pandemic has only highlighted the value of collaboration among legal services providers in a way that we may have been peripherally aware of before, but it just, kind of put everything front and center. I mean, we united immediately when the pandemic started to work more closely as a team. And so I think that this coordinated intake and referral will, continue that collaboration. The way it benefits clients is there is only one door. There's not a client. I would not hesitate to say that there are very few clients, I should say, qualified a little bit, that come into the door of a legal services organization that don't have other legal issues that are outside the scope of what this, organization they're going to does. And so coordinated, and so then they need to go someplace else. And more often than not, they're given another flyer or they're given a phone number of somebody else they need to call. And we're acutely aware of this at First Shift because we deal with working mothers who have the phone in one hand and a baby in the other. And the more doors they're told to go into, the more numbers they need to call, then the less likelihood it is that they're actually going to get to those other doors to knock and to ask for help. And so if they can just come in one door and someone can identify all their needs and then do what we call in social services the warm handoff, where we have people that are actually facilitating their communication and connection with another legal services provider, then they're much more likely to get the help they need to actually make the one legal issue that they came in the door on be useful, the outcome. And so I'm very excited for the potential for this. There are a lot of details that need to be worked out because we are so accustomed to being siloed. And so I'm so grateful that we have an organization like the DC Bar Foundation that's willing to help work with us in order to launch this.
I turn to Alana, Keisha, Karen, anyone else? I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this.
So the deal is that usually when somebody starts looking for representation, they don't always find it right away. They go from legal service provider to legal services provider to legal services provider. And they tell their story over and over and over again. that's just got to add to the trauma of whatever it is that they're going through. It just kind of makes good common sense to limit the number of times they have to relive whatever it is that they're going through or to tell their story. If you can have a coordinated intake and referral system, that could cut out all of the extra. That work could get done through the system. They could identify a legal services provider that can manage whatever their issue is or their issues are. And then they can go on and see that particular legal services provider or a couple of legal services providers, depending upon what's going on in their lives. That makes a whole lot of sense. And it helps people. Because, one of the things that we did maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, the legal services community did the community listening project. And one of the things that we discovered was that people who needed our services didn't necessarily know about us. So if you could have that single point of contact, can you imagine how much more we could do? How many more issues we could address? It just makes good sense. And then the DC Bar Foundation has helped in terms of bringing this together. They've helped in terms of the conversation. They were early on conversations that have been held between legal services providers. But about 3 or 4 years ago, we all came together with the DC Bar Foundation and started talking about a centralized intake and referral system. And they, in fact, have started to bring that together, to pull that together. And that will be with the legal services organizations across the city, giving their input and collaborating on this particular project. And so I'm kind of excited about it. I'm no more than just kind of. I'm really excited about this project because it could bring so much more to our clients than they have right now.
I love your excitement, Karen. I think we're excited about it too. Sorry, Keisha, please go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Karen and Laura. I think this is an excellent idea, a long time coming. I think that the pandemic has showed us all that we cannot remain siloed. We cannot, and be effective advocates on behalf of DC residents. Sometimes we don't even know it, like Alana, like Safe Sister Circle. Some people don't know what that is. Some people who have been like in legal services providers themselves don't know what that is, right? But I think it allows us to know which each of us has to offer, which population are we dealing with, which section of the city that we're dealing with, things like that. I think that having that network not only benefits the clients, but it's also benefiting us as legal service providers, because we are all together with join in one goal, which is to be effective in our representation of our clients, but also figure out, to whether or not do things systemically with regards to systemic litigation or maybe recommendations with regards to policy changes if need be, right? I just think we all know what we all are doing, and so we all have that same goal. And so I think that this is a great step towards that effort.
And honestly, it is an evolution almost of the networks that we've been working on right now, LT LAN and FLAN and all of that, FLAN. And all of that, it really makes sense because we've started to come together. We have those networks. Now you're talking about a centralized intake system that just solidifies it all together. It really does. And it makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. Alana, I don't want to leave you out of this part of the conversation.
Again, I'm reading it myself. I agree with everyone else. I think everyone is right in saying that one-stop place is good for people. Warm referrals are good for people. That people who don't know about my organization sometimes, people are kind of like a diamond in the rough, I think, out in Anacostia. And it's good to be connected with other organizations that know about you. So then they can refer people to us. And then we know about their organizations. So the smaller community-based grassroots organizations that we deal with, we know who to refer them to that they might not be aware of. So I think it's just making a connection from on the ground to up to the legal services through different organizations, like where you stand in that position of the ground up to the higher up legal services. So I think it's right, it's systematic, it's the right way to say it. And I think it's making sure we make all the connections that we need to make and make sure people are getting the services they want no matter where they are. And that they need specific service, like we serve Black women who live in Ward 7 or 8. So they want those specific services that so desire, they know where to look for that with that angle. But if they want other type of services or they need poverty law services or need help with employment law, they know to go to Laura. And I know Laura, so I know to do the one referral to Laura and have done so many times. I think that I agree with everything everyone's saying. I mean, it's not so revolutionary to me because I came in and they're already doing this. Mm-hmm. This is my second year as a DC Bar Foundation grantee. So this is already like in the mix when I came in. So I was like, okay, this is how DC does things. And this is how like it's done here. And DC has a great service provider network in general. I think they're very passionate and very believe in what they really do. And so I think it's just like kind of shows out through this network, the DC Bar Foundation. Yeah. So yeah, it's great. It's been great.
I love it, Alana. I feel like you made it full circle. I think that, as you said, you kind of came in to being a grantee of the DC Bar Foundation, and you kind of came in with this network and understanding the importance of coordinated intake and working together. But I think you've also highlighted the need, as you all have, of this need for systemic change. And that, one thing I continue, I think Mickey, myself, the entire YLN can say we continue to be educated by our service to the DC Bar Foundation and understanding, particularly as we come out of COVID, the need for systemic change because the population that our grantees and the DC Bar Foundation serves are even more in need. And I know that we are kind of about at time, but I just want to say thank you to each of you, Alana, Laura, Karen, Keisha. I've learned more. I'm sure Mickey can say he's learned more. I'm sure everyone listening has learned more. I really encourage everyone who is viewing to please go and learn more about, the DC Bar Foundation and these organizations that we are so happy to be able to help support and fund and continue to support the district and those who are in need. Thank you all again. And Mickey, I think you're going to turn us over.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your perspectives, echoing what Ashley said, and your perspectives on what you do and how the DC Bar Foundation is supporting the work that you do and that the civil legal aid community in DC is doing. And so I want to thank you. And we're going to turn it over to Emily Lagan for an update.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Lagan, and along with Fahad Sagir, we have had the pleasure of co-chairing the sponsorship committee for this event. On behalf of the entire DC Bar Foundation and the Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council, we want to extend our sincere thanks to our sponsors, whose generosity has made this a record-breaking event. You will now see their names listed on the screen. Special thanks to our titanium-level sponsors who supported this event at the $5,000 level. Sage Settlements, Latham & Watkins, Kirkland & Ellis, King & Spalding, and Crowell & Moring. Because of our sponsors and their commitment to furthering the work of the DC Bar Foundation, we met our initial $45,000 goal more than 2 weeks early. We did not stop there and decided to keep on going with a stretch goal of $70,000. If you have not already sponsored the event or would like to increase your existing sponsorship, we invite you to support the event through our Text to Give campaign by texting the word avenues to 44321. As of just a few moments ago, the text campaign has raised $1,654, and we have a current total of $67,826 in contributions. As you just heard from our grantees, your contributions provide access to justice for the most vulnerable communities in our city. You can make a meaningful difference, and every dollar counts. Thank you again for your generous support of the DC Bar Foundation, and I will turn it over to Kira Jarrett to introduce Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to have you here with us for our second Avenues to Justice event. And thank you to Alana, Laura, Karen, and Keisha for your insightful conversation and your broader work within the district's Civil Legal Aid Network. We are so appreciative and thankful of everything you do to advance equal access to justice in our city. Tonight's event would not be possible without the hard work of our Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council, and I want to extend a particular thank you to our Leadership Council co-chairs, Melissa Weberman and Courtney Lindsay, as well as to our event co-chairs, Ashley James and Mickey Herman. You, along with our fellow Leadership Council members, have put many months of careful planning and coordination into this event, and I congratulate you on its success. As you've heard us discuss throughout the night, we are excited about the transformation that a coordinated intake and referral system could bring to the district's civil legal aid network. A single point of entry for those seeking legal help could drastically improve their chances of resolving their legal issues, which is the ultimate goal of our civil legal aid system. So I invite you to join us and partner with us in this effort. It will take all of us to make this happen. And now I'm honored to introduce our final speaker of the evening, the second gentleman of the United States, Douglas Emhoff. Throughout his career, Second Gentleman Emhoff has demonstrated a commitment to civil legal aid and continues to do so as a member of the Biden-Harris administration, where he focuses on justice, equality, and human rights. An attorney with a background of nearly 30 years in entertainment law, Second Gentleman Emhoff is a strong advocate for pro bono work and expanding access to justice across the United States. We could not be more excited to have him here with us tonight. Second Gentleman Emhoff, thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the DC Bar Foundation for inviting me to join you for this year's Avenues to Justice event. And thank you for your leadership in supporting the Civil Aid Network at this extraordinary time. The work you all do is very personal to me. When I was a young lawyer in the early 90s, I volunteered with a nonprofit organization that provided legal help to the people who needed it most. The stories of those people we represented have stayed with me to this day. Fighting wrongful eviction cases underscored for me not only the power of justice, but also the profound impact of representation. But we all know there is a gap in accessing representation. In fact, every year, millions of Americans face challenges accessing the legal help that they need. These are people threatened with eviction, people facing employment discrimination, people in need of protection from domestic violence. Access to legal representation can help people stay in their homes, put food on their tables, and keep their families safe. Access to legal representation can literally change lives. But like most problems facing our country, challenges like these have been further magnified by the pandemic, which means the work of legal aid services has never been more important. Now, over the past few months, I spent a lot of time on the road checking in with Americans all across our great country. In Oregon, I met a man who struggled to access unemployment benefits after he was terminated for raising concerns about his employer's lack of PPE during the pandemic. It took over a year before he was able to access the benefits that he was actually entitled to. Something he said wouldn't have been possible without the tireless work of his legal aid attorney, who I got to meet. I also met a mother faced with an eviction challenge. She was laid off from her job when her employer downsized due to the pandemic. To make matters worse, wildfires had displaced her family from their home. She fell behind in the rent and was served with an improper eviction notice. Now, thanks to the help of legal representation, she's been able to fight back and keep her family in their home. And as you all know, there are stories like these in every single community. And as our country emerges from this horrible COVID pandemic, a robust civil legal aid network is more critical than ever. Communities of color and low income have disproportionately borne the brunt of the pandemic. Inequities that existed before the pandemic have only grown worse. It's our moral duty as a nation to ensure that the recovery is equitable. I want you to know that you are not alone in the work that you are doing. The Biden-Harris administration is very committed to strengthening the federal government's role in expanding access to legal representation. In fact, President Biden recently reestablished the White House Legal Aid Interagency Roundtable, LAIR, to prioritize civil legal aid and expand access to federal programs. We can create a fair and equitable system of justice. But to get there, we've got to keep working and working together. So before I close, I want to take a minute to applaud the DC Bar Foundation Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council. Their work to expand access to justice within the community is a goal we should all work towards. Thank you for all your incredible work, and thank you again for inviting me to join you this evening.
Thank you, Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff. What an incredible testament to the work of the DC Bar Foundation and our grantees that the Second Gentleman spent some time with us tonight. And thank you to Mayor Bowser and our motivating panelists who brought to life the vital importance of civil legal aid and the importance of the DCBF. My name is Allison Rochford, and along with Stephanie Bitto, we have had the pleasure of co-chairing the entertainment committee for this evening's event. If you are as inspired as I was by what you heard tonight, I hope you'll consider donating to the DCBF. It's simple as texting the word avenues to 44321. Your support will allow the DCBF to ensure that the residents of the district have equal access to justice, regardless of income. And thanks to everyone's generous support, we beat our goal of $70,000, but you can still donate to support the vital work of the DCBF. That concludes our program this evening. Thank you again to our individual and corporate sponsors and to you at home for joining us for our second annual Avenues to Justice.